Global Education in Jeju. While we wait to start, I would like to let you know how we are going to proceed this session. Due to the time constraint, we will have 10 minutes for each presenter, and then open the floor for discussion for about 20 minutes. We are told to finish the session by 6:40, at the latest 6:50. So we would like attention to the time we are given. And I think we can start. As we know, in this era of globalization, the importance of global education and global educators are becoming more and more important. And here we have gathered to discuss the ideas and share the ideas for cooperation among higher education for global education. We have several presenters today, but the Vice President of Jeju National University, Professor Kim Ik-sang, is going to properly introduce them. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Vice President Kim Ik-sang.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to meet many distinguished guests at Jejuporum 2014. As you know, the Korean government is carrying out Global Teachers University project in 4 different national universities. Jeju National University has one of the 4 GTU centers, and this session is hosted by JNU GTU Center. First of all, my heartfelt welcome is extended to honorable presenters and discussants. First, Geoff Reardon, Dean of Education at the University of Canberra, and Mark Giroux, Dean of Teacher Education at Western Oregon University, and Lee In-hwae, Professor of Graduate School of Education at Jeju National University, and Kim Won-chan, Vice Superintendent of Jeju Office of Education, and Son Bong-soo, Director of JDC Education City Office, and Kim Sung-baek and Kwon Sang-chul, Professors of College of Education at Jeju National University, and Go Kyung-hee, the moderator of this session. My appreciation also goes to all the professors and staff who have been preparing hard for the forum, and finally also to the president of Jeju National University, Ho Hyang-jin, the passionate supporter of JNU GTU Center. As you know, Jeju has become a center of global education since the development of Jeju Free International City in 2002. Jeju Global Education City, launched in 2008, has now 3 international schools: Branksome Hall Asia, NLCS, and Korea International School. And perhaps St. Johnsbury Academy, Jeju, will be opened in 2016. JNU, the only national university in Jeju, has tried to create and nurture new local, that means global and local, leaders brimming with innovative and ambitious spirit. For the purpose, JNU pushes forward to become one of the world's best universities through renewed effort and innovation, putting its emphasis on whole person education and making a strong partnership with the local community. In accordance with the vision of JNU, JNU GTU Center aims not only to develop student global competence, but also to educate students as global teachers. In order to accomplish the goals, the center offers several programs, including international internship, exchange, and dual degree programs. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that everyone gathered here shares a passion for improving teacher education in a global setting. This is exactly what this session is designed for, that is to search together for global cooperation and understanding in the fields of education. I hope you will be able to share diverse perspectives and vision on global education. I also hope this forum will take a serious look at the role of globalized teachers and provide meaningful responses to the challenges faced on a global scale. Again, I extend my appreciation for your participation and my best wishes for a successful discussion that offers promising implications for all of you. Thank you.
I would like to thank you, Vice President Kim. He is also a colleague of my department, so I'm ready to call him a professor rather than Vice President. Vice President Kim has emphasized the interest of Jeju for global education, and also Jeju National University's effort to make our college more accessible for global education. And one thing I'd like to add is that the principal from Branksome Hall University couldn't be here today due to an unavoidable circumstance, and we regret his absence because we were looking forward to listening to his insight on Jeju, providing better local environment for global education. We certainly hope that we'll have a second chance soon. And now, I guess we are ready to listen to our international visitors and presenters from Australia and United States. And first, from Australia, Dr. Jordan.
Yes.
Did I pronounce it right?
Very close.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, please give him a warm applause, and we will be all ears to listen to him. Please welcome Mr. Jordan.
So, do you have my PowerPoint?
Yes. So you can go there.
Oh, you want me to go over there? Okay. Thank you.
Tell me.
So, how do I get those slides? Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for the kind words of welcome and for the introduction from the Vice President. And thank you very much for the great honour of the invitation to be here with you today. I will try and keep within my time. This is a topic I feel very passionate about, so I will move through this quite quickly. My name is Jeff, and I'm the Dean of a faculty that has a number of international programs. So what I want to do today is to introduce you to higher education in Australia. Next, talk about Australia's approach to internationalisation. Then some features of internationalisation at my university, and then I'd like to conclude with some lessons that I've learned from what's now nearly 12 years of working with international partnerships with foreign universities, and what I've learnt, and where I think in particular for education there are opportunities for collaboration. So, but before I start off, enjoyed very much seeing around your beautiful Treasure Island today. I thought I'd show you where I'm from. Does that work? No. So I'm from Australia, and the red circle there is where the Australian Capital Territory is. I'm I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be pointing this. This is a photograph of our Parliament House, which is taken from a hill overlooking Canberra. Canberra has about 350,000 people, about half the population of Jeju, and we're the university named after our capital city. I'm not sure what I'm doing here. I just want to know how to advance the slides. Sorry, thank you. This is a photograph of our beautiful Parliament House, so if you ever visit Australia you should make sure you visit it. It's one of the most beautiful buildings. It was designed by an Italian architect who also designed the residence for the Vice-Chancellor of our university, which is not quite as palatial as that. Again, we move to the next slide. This is a slide of photos taken at the University of Canberra. So it's like any other modern university. We're set in nice surroundings and have very good facilities. So if we go to the next slide again, please. I'm the Dean of a faculty that put together 4 disciplines that we're the only faculty in Australia that brings science, technology, mathematics and education together, and it's an experiment. And I'm very keen to do this because, for a number of reasons, but I think that education research in Australia and in my university could benefit from a more rigorous scientific approach to research, and I think that the science, technology and mathematics university courses could benefit from academics who know about curriculum and pedagogy, helping them improve student learning outcomes. There's also a third, so when we bring those together we can ask new questions and design new research programs, particularly about what we call STEM education, science, technology, engineering and mathematics. So we hope to become leaders in STEM education research in Australia. And the next slide is a photo that's taken at the back of my building, and it wouldn't be a presentation from Australia without a mandatory photo of a kangaroo, which is that little thing you can see between the 2 gum trees. And that's what I see each morning at the back of my building. So now I'll get on to the serious part of the talk. I hope I haven't... Oh, that was... Kangaroos are serious. So we move to the next slide, please. Australian universities, you may know this, but we're very much followed the British tradition. We have very similar structures. We have similar academic positions of lecturers and senior lecturers. We've copied their quality assurance processes. We've copied their policies for research excellence exercises. We have similar course designs, similar teaching strategies. But there are some differences, but I'm saying this because I did my PhD in Canada, and I'm aware that the British, Australian, New Zealand system, and even the Indian system to some extent, is different to the North American system, and I can see strengths and weaknesses of both. If we go to the next slide. After the Second World War, Australia was a signatory to the Colombo Plan. And this was very much, it was a spirit around the world at the time that you got your independence from Japan. But from after that horrible conflict of the Second World War, Australia was very keen to make sure that it invested in the future of Asia, India, Asia and the Pacific. So for over 55 years or so, our government invested in scholarships for students to come to Asia. So our approach to having international students was very much a wealthy nation wanting to provide support for a rapidly developing Asia to develop strong partnerships with Asia. But in the 1990s that changed, and there was dramatic growth in international students, and that was because our government began to reduce funding for the 40 or so publicly funded universities in Australia, and the universities all soon realised from 96 through to about 2002 that we needed to recruit international students in order to maintain our levels of income to support research. So while I am confident that we offer a very good education experience to international students, our motivation moved from investment in development to one of still having positive benefits but becoming far more business oriented. And the final point there, it says we're the 4th largest export. I've just checked my notes, that's incorrect. It's the 3rd largest export industry in Australia, which is quite significant. Could you move to the next slide, please? This graph, I don't expect you to be able to read the detail, but I'll see if I can get that point. Oops, sorry, I've messed it up on you. Could you take it back to the previous slide? And I'm just pointing here, so in '96 there, that's when the governments started to reduce funding to universities, and you can see it took them a few years to start to respond. But then we see this huge growth in international students coming to study in Australia. This decline here is due to 2 things. It was the very high Australian dollar, plus changes to the immigration laws that made it more difficult for people studying in Australia to get citizenship. That's being changed back, so the data that we're seeing, we'll see this start to rise again as our dollar has fallen. This is, I don't expect you to engage with this, but the top blue part is universities. So you can see here, this is English language centres, vocational colleges. These are people who come to Australia to go to school, particularly a lot of students from China. If they attend the final year of schooling in Australia, they haven't got to pass English language requirements to get into university. So a lot of wealthy families will send their children to Australia to do Year 12. And the non-award, the red, is simply people coming in to do short courses, short training programs. If you go to the next slide, please. So there are 1.25 million students enrolled in higher education, so that is universities, vocational colleges and English language training colleges. And at point 2, there are, of that number, 74% are domestic and just over 25%, 25.7% enrolled in higher education. That's post-school compulsory education, are international students, and they are largely 80% or more from Asia. If you move to the next slide, please. And could someone indicate, I really don't want to use up more than my time. Have I got a few minutes left? Is anyone keeping a check of the time? How long? 2, 3 minutes? 3 minutes, thank you. Okay, so these are the examples of different things that universities in Australia do in terms of internationalisation. We have quite an established network of people involved in marketing, selling our courses through agents. Transnational education programs are where Australian universities teach their courses, but in country, rather than the students come to Australia. My faculty has 2 of those. Some universities, not mine, have set up their campuses in Vietnam, Malaysia, China, South Africa. This is an increasing trend. You're probably as aware of it as I am. But we've also got foreign universities setting up campuses in Australia. So we have American universities and British universities establishing campuses in Australia. And I can see that trend of globalisation continuing, a bit like those student numbers that started off slow and then went up quickly. I think universities building campuses in other countries will see a lot more of that. It has 2 advantages. The State University of New York, I think, is one of them, or has campuses all over the world. But what they do is not so much for local students, but so they can send their students to that country and study their courses, but in a different context. That's an interesting trend. Twinning and articulation programs, I know you're familiar with that from discussions I've had today. Study abroad and student exchange is our university sets very high targets for that. We're very keen to partner with that. Joint courses, these are interesting. This is where you'll get universities from 3 or 4 different countries offer one master's program online using distance education, but each university might only teach a quarter of the course. So the student will study a quarter of the course with one university, a quarter with another university. So our faculty has such a program in a Masters of Forensic Studies, which is a program that works closely with the Australian Federal Police, who is the peak forensics body in Australia, and they do a lot of work on international terrorism. So in the Bali bombings, it was the Australian Federal Police and our faculty that did a lot of the investigative work. So we've got a university in the United States, one in Europe, and a university in Asia that's about to join us. So there'll be 4 partners. That's a very good model, and one I'd commend you to consider. International studies degrees, where you send students overseas, which is what your global teacher education program is doing. And I think the ones that will really start to take off in the next few years are international research collaborations. My faculty has just started a few of these now. We can go to the next slide, please. University of Canberra. These are where I'm just repeating points from the previous slide, but they're the things that I could talk to you about later. That's what we do. Whereas nationally there's 25%, we've got 20% international students, and we've got a very international staff. I'd be making the numbers up, but in my faculty, at least 40% of the staff were academic staff were either born in other countries or did their doctoral studies in other countries. And probably 30% of them speak at least 2 languages, mostly Asian languages. The research partnerships, we've also sending a lot of students overseas as part of their degree to do professional placement. So we've got science students at the moment and teacher education students doing a placement in science laboratories and schools in Shanghai, and we got Commonwealth government funding to support that. If we move to the next slide, please. So this is an extract from our strategic plan, which this PowerPoint might be available to you, but our strategic plan has a lot of initiatives about internationalising our programs, having more students have an international experience, and internationalising our research. And our goal is to prepare graduates who will be cross-culturally competent and able to succeed in an increasingly globalised world. These objectives, I think, would be shared by most universities at the moment. And the next slide, please. The only things that we're doing that probably haven't been covered before is because we have an education faculty. For the last 3 years, I've been taking large numbers of teachers and principals to visit Hong Kong, Shanghai, Hangzhou, and other education jurisdictions because there's a lot of interest in TIMS and ESA. So we do a study tour each year. And we've had now a lot of teachers and principals from China come out to reciprocate, and we host them for a couple of weeks. This is collaboration and sharing. If you could move to the next slide, please. So why do we do this in teacher education? I think that international education is one of the most powerful learning experiences a person can have. I won't go into the next. Most of the theory we teach in courses is context or situation free. It's just generalisable knowledge, whereas professional knowledge needs to be applied in context. So I think teacher education should be rethought and redesigned so that we can provide a widest possible variety of context in which to apply the propositions to come up with practice knowledge. I think that is an ideal model for teacher education. I also think it's important that we keep in universities reinventing and rethinking what we do, constantly challenge ourselves. And I think teaching is one of the few truly international careers. My hope would be that graduates from my university, from the university where I work, I don't own the university, but graduates from University of Canberra would have a dream or a vision to work in many countries around the world and have a rich life and a rich career at the same time. Finally, if you just go to the next slide, I'm going to, I'll leave it there because I said in my abstract that I'd just talk about a few things that I've learnt from this. And I'm very keen to really progress for the next few years international research partnerships, and I've got some ideas and we've already established MOUs with universities how to do it. But I'd just like to close by sharing what I've learnt by particularly the work in China for the last 12 years. And I'm not sure if this was culturally dependent or if I'm being naive, but I'll share with you honestly what I think is critical about university to university partnerships that work. You have to get to know each other well enough to be able to have trust. And once you have that trust, you need to be able to really understand each other's hopes and dreams and commit to helping each other realise their dreams. You have to commit to solving problems together, not blaming each other when things don't work out. You have to be honest, and you have to follow through with what you say. And I'm afraid not many times I've said we'll do things and probably haven't followed through. And it's also been my experience in partnerships that the other side hasn't followed through. But where we have done all those things, the relationships have become very, very productive. I think, I won't name the university, but there is one university in one province in China where what I've just described really does accurately capture that relationship, and we now contact each other and present new opportunities to each other all the time, and that's exciting. I suppose what I'm saying, and I'm not sure how this works culturally, but my instinct is it works. If you trust each other, share your dreams, commit to solving each other's problems, be honest with each other when things don't work out, and follow through with what you say, that's a great recipe, not just for university partnerships, but for all human relationships. Thank you for the invitation to be here. I hope that was of interest.
Thank you. I hope I didn't take too long. I tried to be fast. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Whedon. I think I'm doing better with your last name.
Yes.
Of your informative presentation about global education in Australia and University of Canberra. Especially, we appreciate your presenting diverse opportunities that University of Canberra provides for inbound students and outbound students. Such bi-directional efforts will foster effective global education. And we also thank you for your sharing, your emphasis about the importance of international higher education partnership. You mentioned the trust and what I cannot read what I had written down. What was the next one? Trust and?
Trust and honesty and solving each other's problems.
Yes, problem solving and follow through
with what you
for
say.
Productive partnership for global education.
Yes.
Thank you again. And I think we are ready to listen to Dr. Gerard from Western Oregon University. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him with warm applause.
Thank you very much for inviting me today. I'm pleased to be a participant on this panel and to see the wonderful enthusiasm and energy around this forum here today. These are clearly important and provocative ideas that we must take seriously as we move forward into the future. As mentioned, my name is Mark Gerard. I serve as the Dean of the College of Education at Western Oregon University. And though I don't have any pictures of kangaroos or
sorry, Mark.
In my neck of the woods, it would be deer. But I would like to take the opportunity, as Jeff did, to describe just a little bit to you about where I'm from, because I think it also bears importance on the work that we do at my university. The population of Oregon, my entire state, which is about, let's see, 500 kilometers wide and about 400 kilometers long, so a fairly large geographic area. There are only 6 million people living in that region. Our largest school district in the state of Oregon serves a geographic population of only about 160,000 people. So we're talking about a fairly small, fairly regional, fairly local context in which we are trying to prepare teachers for a global world. So you can imagine that presents some challenges. Before I talk about those challenges in particular, I need to tell you just a bit about Western Oregon University. We are a small, regional, public, liberal arts university. We serve about 7,000 students, only about 500 of which are graduate students, and those graduate students are almost all in education programs. Our university, I feel like listening to Jeff's presentation gives me a little glimpse into our future as he shared with you the numbers of international students studying in Australia, and his numbers reflect numbers in the United States, that more and more students from outside of the United States are studying at universities inside the United States. I wish it was true that students inside the United States were taking opportunities at an equivalent rate to study outside of the United States. I don't think that is quite yet true. I wonder what your thoughts would be on those numbers in Australia, Jeff, but my guess is they don't quite reflect incoming international students. So at Western Oregon University, we serve a population of students that are predominantly Oregonians, predominantly from small towns, predominantly lower to middle class Caucasian students, who, frankly, many of which have never set foot outside of their state, let alone outside of their country. You can imagine that this creates some challenges in terms of teacher preparation work. We want to prepare a workforce, an educator workforce, that finds great value in globalization, global education, and opportunities that present themselves accordingly. To do so, though, requires, in my opinion, some systematic work. We have 4 years in which to help our students overcome, if you will, their apprenticeship of observation. They've watched many teachers teach over the years as students, and have from that drawn some conclusions about what it means to teach and how learning works and the context and the settings in which that work plays out. And one of our tasks is to complicate that, or help our students to see things a little differently than the opinions that they may have formed. Our students take a series of classes in their early experiences. An overview of second language acquisition, coursework in special education, coursework specific to multicultural education, and finally coursework connected to performance in the schools, sort of the student teaching aspect of what we do. And in each of those courses, there's a strong reflective component. What we want our students to do is to become barrier crossers, to seek to move into territory that they're unfamiliar with, and in the process of doing so, to become more articulate and more deeply understood about themselves. As we move into global education, 2 things matter. One is the context, and the other is how I perceive myself in that context, how I perceive myself and others in that context. So we tend to take these things very seriously in our teacher preparation work at my university. Let me give you a couple small examples here. One of the things that is sweeping the United States right now in teacher preparation is performance assessment, teacher performance assessment. I like to call it the driver's license examination for teachers. And with that, of course, we have begun to get very serious about defining the skills and the knowledge and the things that a teacher has to be able to execute, the things that a teacher has to be able to do to achieve student learning. My university has been very systematic in this effort, and I'm very keen through the conversations that I've heard today and as others have shared, how we're defining global education, as this really matters. The definitions that we put to global education, the goals that we articulate for ourselves will inevitably drive the assessments and the metrics that we will use for measuring our progress, our success along the way. And I sense that we talk about global education from many perspectives, and that's one of the things that we're trying to be most articulate about at Western Oregon University. What does this really mean? Let me give you a very local example. My university has developed a framework, a pedagogical model for connecting teaching practices to learning of individual students. We call that model the teacher work sample. And it's literally a collection of artifacts that demonstrate our candidates' ability to conduct analysis of the setting in which teaching and learning will occur, to identify outcomes that are important and powerful and aligned to things like state and national content standards, to develop lessons, to differentiate appropriately for different students and different groups of students in their charge, and finally to run an assessment program of pre and post assessment, as well as to use formative assessments in ways that support student learning. All of these products together constitute our teacher work sample system, and it is required for licensure in the state of Oregon. This system was invented on our campus, and we give lots of time and energy to it. What I gleaned over in that initial description is probably one of the most compelling pieces of the teacher work sample in analysis of the context in which teaching and learning will occur. When our students conduct this work, they are concurrently taking a course in multicultural education and have had previously several courses helping them to understand the diversity of human experience. That might be cultural, it might be ability diversity, it might be linguistic diversity, it's diversity in the broadest sense. But we ask our students to think very carefully about the outcomes that they are seeking to accomplish in their classroom against the range of that diversity. And then, of course, seek to draw upon that diversity in ways to either support student learning or, in some cases, to mitigate the negative effects of that diversity on opportunities for learning. Of course, we come at this from a funds of knowledge sort of approach and view the range of human experience as opportunities for growth, not as deficits to overcome. This work, though, uniquely positions the instructional delivery that our students conduct in their student teaching efforts from this perspective of taking seriously differences, and right down to the assessment components of their instructional unit. We ask our candidates to report the impact on learning, or how our students perform on assessments, right down to the individual student. So again, we want our teacher candidates to understand how they are potentially differentially effective for different groups of students. This is inevitable. We hope to overcome achievement gaps. We hope to not perpetuate these sort of myths and stereotypes, but inevitably there are differences in how pupils learn, and we want our students to think carefully about those differences and whether or not they, as the teacher, contribute to those differences in negative ways, in ways that they should seeking to mitigate. And so it turns out to be a very systematic and productive set of conversations between the individual student and the faculty member who's supporting them throughout this process. So I wanted to put that out on the table as one strategy that we use to do some very local work in helping our students to think divergently about difference and the range of possibilities in teaching and learning. Of course, my university and our programs in the College of Education are involved in many of the other, many things that you might expect. Opportunities for students to study abroad, shorter term experiences over spring vacation or Christmas vacation to travel and do study tours and things like that. I've led several student trips, in particular to do to work in disability advocacy in northern Vietnam. And those experiences are invaluable, but again, at Western Oregon University, where many of these students have not traveled outside of their local region, even an experience of 2 weeks can be very intimidating for an 18 or 19-year-old young person. So we're moving in this direction, but we're moving slowly, and it's clearly important and it clearly matters. So again, I'd just like to leave you with this last thought that what we're trying to do in teacher preparation work at Western Oregon University is to help our students become deeply reflective about who they are, and then to seek to cross boundaries in ways that will make them more and more effective as teachers with the most diverse range of students that they might face. So our efforts at this time are fairly local, but we are interested in expanding those opportunities, and I'm pleased to build relationships at a forum like this and to have other folks push us and continue to expand our efforts in that regard. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gerard, for introducing your university's teacher education program, and especially giving us information about your teacher performance assessment component and your emphasis on being aware of diversities in teaching and learning. Our next presenter is Dr. Lee In-hye, and he's from Jeju National University. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Professor Lee.
Thank you. I handed out this paper to the presenters, so you can look at the papers, which will give you some idea about the internationalization of higher education in Korea and internationalization Korean teacher education and Global Teachers University, which is GTU. Right, I'm very honored to be here as a part of this session with highly knowledgeable experts from various organizations. As far as I know, this session was organized with the theme of global education in Jeju to discuss how to train effectively global teachers and how to establish productive cooperation with universities across the world, as well as with the international schools in Jeju Global Education Theme. The title of my presentation is Creating Hope Through Global Teachers Education. We are facing opportunity and challenges. The keywords of my presentation is global education and globalization, global teachers, and GTU. Thomas Friedman, one of the most well-known popular writer on globalization, terrorized Olympic motto of further, faster, higher to argue that globalization is moving so fast, further, faster, cheaper, and deeper, that the world is flat. Thus, globalization can be defined as a process in which the people and countries of the world are being brought together, close and close together, economically and culturally, through trade, information, technology, travel, cultural exchanges, the mass media, and mass entertainment like K-pop, and education. This indicates that globalization is irreversible, and today we must embrace the inexorable knowledge of globalization. Although globalization has many strong advocates and many critics. In this regard, global education is necessary and global teachers are needed. According to Dr. Mueller, known as the father of global education, this is the challenge you are facing now. A child is born today will be faced as an adult almost daily with problems of the global interdependence nature, be it peace, food, and the quality of life, information, or security of resources. She will be both an actor and beneficiary or victim in the total world. And he may rightly ask, why I was not one, and why was I not better educated? Why did my teacher not tell me about these problems and indicate my behavior as a member of an independent human race? What then are the global teachers? Global teachers can provide young people with critical insights into social, cultural, and political impacts of the globalized economic integration and communication technologies, as well as provide them with capacities to access the cost and benefit in their life of international communities and those of life in other part of the world. And how should we train global teachers in a global context? I'd like to offer one example, the Global Teachers University project. It is implemented by the Ministry of Education in year 2011. The purpose of the GTU is to train global teachers with the international cooperation of universities, more precisely teacher education institution of universities, between Korea and the USA or other countries like Australia or around the world. 4 universities in Korea have taken part in GTU since year 2012 and will extend to 12 universities by year 2016. Jeju National University is one of them, and JNU launched the GTU in July year 2013 and signed the MOU with 7 universities in America and 2 universities in Hong Kong. Now, 7 pre-service students were selected for the dual bachelor degree and sent to Boise University in USA this year. The students may get the Idaho teacher certificate after going through successfully all the requirements. Then they can become effective global teachers and teach future generation in Korea or in US. Also, JNU organized 2-week field experience with Branksmore, Russia in Jeju, which is one of the international schools as well as partner schools for GTU. This kind of school-university cooperation would help train global teachers and possible employment. Besides the programs, JENU has developed several other programs as a part of GTU. However, we found some challenges at the second international workshop, which was held with 7 partner universities in February this year. Those challenges are different teacher education system, complicated requirements for teacher certificate, and financial matter related to tuition and fee, and etc. The major barrier is education policy and regulations that are not ready for the allowing foreign students to become teachers in accordance to globalization and demand of global teachers. Thus, we need to start discussing and establishing global standards in order to overcome these challenges and barriers. I expect that many straightforward opinions will be exchanged at this session regarding global education initiatives undertaken in each organization and practical ways to cooperate among these organizations, as well as regarding the thoughtful ideas to overcome the challenges mentioned above locally, nationally, and internationally. Finally, I would like to express my profound gratitude to all the presenters and participants, and especially to Jeju National University GTU Center for their ongoing effort to conduct a dialogue regarding global teacher education. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for your presentation of GTU program, Global Teacher Education, Global Teacher University program at Jeju National University, and presenting us the progresses we have made and challenges we are experiencing. I think we certainly have common grounds to discuss, and now we are ready to listen to the discussions, and for the interest of time, I think we will hear all the 3 discussants and then let the presenters answer. Professor Kim, would you like to start?
제가 먼저 할까요? 전 조금 이게 들은 거 보고 듣고 좀 몇 가지만 제가 코멘트를 좀 하겠습니다. 일단 호주 캔버라 대학에서 제가 들었던 것 가장 인상적이었던 것은 캔버라 대학에서 외국인 학생들을 많이 받는 것도 있지만 그만큼 또 그 캔버라 대학에 있는 학생들을 해외로 보낸다, 이 아시아 쪽으로 많이 보낸다는 게 굉장히 좀 인상적이었던 것 같고요. 그 다음에 웨스트 오레건 대학에서도 양질의 교사를 양성하기 위해서 여러 가지 좋은 노력을 많이 하고 있구나, 그게 굉장히 좀 인상적으로 들었습니다. 그 다음에 이제 GTU에 대해서 우리 그 이내 교수님이 좀 설명을 드렸는데 제가 조금 더 약간 좀 추가 좀 설명을 좀 드리려고 합니다. 지금 그 이내 교수님이 말씀하셨던 거가 원래 그 GTU 사업의 성격이었는데요. 이번 연도에 저희가 조금 바뀌었습니다. 사업이 가장 크게 달라진 게 1차 연도는 그 어떤 소수 정예로 해외로 복사학위를 받게 하고 교사 자격증을 따서 영어 교육교실이나 또는 미국의 학교로 교사를 취업하는 데만 완전히 우리가 초점을 맞췄다고 하면 이번에는 이제 저희가 소수 학생들을 그대로 하긴 하되 대다수의 교대 사대 학생들이 어떻게 하면 글로벌 역량을 키울 수 있나, 이런 부분을 좀 더 굉장히 강화시켜달라고 해가지고 많은 학생들이 그 GTU 사업에 참여를 해서 글로벌 역량을 키우는 쪽, 이런 부분에 대해서 지금 저희가 2차년도부터 사업이 조금 포인트가 하나가 더 늘었다. 좀 더 목표가 그래서 2개가 된 겁니다. 해외 나가서 복사기를 받고 교육증을 받아서 어떤 국제학교나 또 이제 미국의 학교로 취업할 수 있는 거고, 그 다음에 이제 우리 교대사대 학생들이 국내에서 교사가 되더라도 어떤 글로벌 능력이 굉장히 커진 상태로 되면 훨씬 더 어떤 글로벌 교육을 잘할 수 있지 않겠느냐. 그런 측면에서 이제 2가지 목표를 가지고 있는데요. 그래서 이제 그 글로벌 역량을 강화시키기 위해서 저희가 이번에는 조금 더 강화시키고 있는 프로그램이 뭐냐면, 우리 학생들을, 교대사대 학생들이 많이 참여할 수 있는 그런 프로그램을 많이 만들어야 되겠다. 해외 장기 파견하는 프로그램의 가장 큰 문제는 예산이 많이 듭니다. 예를 들면 1년, 2년 파견해버리면 한 학생당 최소 10만 원 이상 들어서 많은 학생들이 혜택을 받을 수가 없거든요. 예산은 뭐 한 3억 조금 넘습니다. 예산이 제한이 있기 때문에 그런 건 소수 적용밖에 못하는데, 다수 혜택을 받으려면 저희가 우리 학교 내에서 하는 어떤 글로벌 프로그램이 많이 있어야 되겠다. 그래서 해외 사과를 불러다가 오프라인 강좌를 한다든가, 아니면 이제 미국이나 저기 좀 멀리 보내지 말고 동남아나 뭐 괌이라든가 또는 필리핀이라든가 동남아의 학생들을 좀 많이 짧은 기간 동안 보내서 그 학생들이 글로벌 능력을 좀 많이 경험할 수 있게, 예를 들면 그래서 한 2주나 뭐 4주 괌이나 필리핀을 보내서 영어도 좀 늘리고, 그 다음에 또 교육봉사, 교육 실습을 좀 해서 글로벌 어떤 체험을 좀 할 수 있도록 그런 프로그램을 좀 더 강화시키는 쪽으로 이번 연도에 저희가 좀 하고 있습니다. 예, 이상입니다.
Okay. Director Son, would you like to take the mic?
제가 지금 GTU 이번 세션 관련된 주제와 연관해서 시간도 많지 않은 것 같아서 짧게 말씀드리고 싶은데요. 그 2가지를 저는 말씀드리고 싶어요. 지금 GTU 프로젝트 관련해서 제주대학교가 지금 그 4개 대학 중에 하나로 선정이 되었다는 것 자체가 이제 기회니까, 이 GTU 프로젝트 관련해서 기회 요인 부분하고 이제 앞으로의 과제 부분에 나눠서 짧게 말씀을 드리고 싶습니다. 첫 번째, 기회 요인 관련해서는 사실은 이제 GTU 프로젝트의 4개 대학 중에 하나로 11년, 12년 뭐 이렇게 선정된 역사를 보면, 실제 이제 대한민국 내에서 제주를 국제자유도시로 만들겠다는 프로젝트가 2002년부터 추진돼서 지금 10년 넘게 진행을 하고 있고요. 또 특별히 글로벌 에듀케이션 관련해서는 2007년부터 정부 주도로 제주의 영어 교육 도시, 글로벌 교육 도시를 만들고 있습니다. 글로벌 에듀케이션 시티 자체를 380만 제곱미터 면적에 2007년, 8년부터 시작해서 이미 이제 3개 학교가 개교해 있고, 2021년까지 이제 7개의 국제학교에 약 9,000명의 학생을 수용하는 그 도시로 만드는 프로젝트입니다. 거기에 이제 주거시설이나 상업 기타 지원시설까지 하면 글로벌 교육을 주제로 한 도시가 이제 만들어지는 겁니다. 이게 제주에 만들어지기 때문에 특별하게 기회 요인이 될 것 같고요. GTU 프로젝트를 통해서 양성된 글로벌 교사들도 취업할 수 있는 기회가 대한민국의 다른 지역보다는 훨씬 유리한 그 환경이 조성된다. 그리고 실제 뭐 아까 발표에서도 말씀들 하셨지만 해외 대학들이 그 영어를 쓰는 미국, 영국의 대학들이 해외 캠퍼스를 하지만 지금 한국에도 초중고등학교 브랜드들도 학교들이 그 한국으로 진출을 하고 있거든요. 근데 다른 지역들은 실제로 거기에 이제 그 대한민국 국민들이 들어가려고 그러면 제한들이 상당히 많습니다. 부모가 외국 국적을 가져야 된다든가, 한국 국적에 뭐 3년 이상 외국 거주를 해야 된다든가 이런 제한들이 있는데, 제주 영어교육도시 내에 있는 국제학교들은 그런 제한이 전혀 없거든요. 대한민국이 자유롭게 100% 올 수 있다, 이런 그 특성들을 갖고 있고, 한국 학력도 인정되고 여러 이점들이 있기 때문에 좋은 요인들을 갖고 있고, 정부에서 또 적극적으로 지원을 하고 있기 때문에 제주 대학에서 GTU 프로그램이 제대로 그 성공을 한다면, 아까 이제 교수님도 잠깐 말씀하셨지만 학위를 취득하고 취업하는데도 다른 지역보다 유리한 부분들이 있습니다. 이런 부분들이 있는데, 이거를 이제 그러면은 기회로 삼아서 이거를 이제 저희 이제 앞으로 과제죠. 이제 1년 됐으면 과제를 보면 저희가 이제 영어교육부시를 JDC에서 그 사업 시행자로 지금 추진을 하고 있는데 학부모들이나 학생들이나 얘기를 들어보면 취업의 문제도 영어교육도시가 제주에 있는데 그러면 제주에서 영어교육도시 일부분이 있는데 이거를 글로벌 교육을 제주 전체로 확산하는 거가 이제 과제로 남을 거 아닙니까? 이거 확산을 하려고 그러면 교수님 말씀하신 G2 프로그램 자체가 이제 2000년도에 확대해서 현재 교대 사범대에 있는 학생 이 교사로 됐을 때 국제학교 말고 일반 제주에 있는 학교 학생들도 글로벌 교육을 통해서 글로벌 인재를 양성하는 쪽으로 간다고 그러면 바람직하긴 한 것 같습니다. 근데 시간적으로 시간을 가지고 이게 좀 성공을 거두려고 하면 제 아이디어입니다만 아까 이게 GTU를 떠난 글로벌 교티처로서 인재 양성이 되는 학생들 이제 나중에는 교사들이 되겠죠. 이분들이 결국은 이제 경쟁력을 가져야 되겠죠. 핵심이 끝나가서 바로 취업이 보장되지 않으니까 GTU로 선정된 제주 대학의 경쟁력, 그 대학을 나온 학생들의 경쟁력을 가져야 될 것 같습니다. 그러면 이제 그거는 뭐 여러 가지가 이제 복합적으로 적용할 것 같습니다. 구체적으로 이제 말씀드리긴 뭐하는데 제가 이제 예산이 항상 이제 대학도 그렇고 이제 재학 요인으로 작용하지 않습니까? 그리고 뭐 3억고 그걸로 그 학생들 교대 사범대 학생 전체를 보낼 수도 없고. 근데 실제로 이제 첫 번째 취업으로 보면 뭐 그게 물리 선생님이든 수학 선생님이든 학생들한테 이제 영어로 능숙하게 가르쳐야 되는데 모국어를 저희가 영어를 쓰지 않다 보니까 좀 어려운 부분들이 있는 것 같아요. 지금 국제학교에서도. 그러면 이 한정된 예산으로 2주, 4주, 동남아 이렇게 그러면 비용 면에서는 상당히 효율적으로 갈 수 있을 건데 그게 과연 이제 그 영어 능력이 2주, 4주 만에 또는 6개월 만에 느느냐 이거는 좀 회의적인 것 같아요. 보면은. 그래서 이제 제 아이디어는 제주 대학교에 차라리 영어로 수업을 하는 교수들을 초빙을 해서 아예 처음부터 끝까지 4년간 영어로만 수업을 하는 거죠. 영어로 그 교사를 가르치는 이게 시간이 좀 걸릴 겁니다만 그렇게 하고 거기에 이제 학생들이 아예 해외로 가지 않고 제주 대학에서 4년 내내 모든 과목을 전부 다 영어로 받는 거를 한번 시도해 보는 거는 이거는 뭐 시간이나 여러 가지가 이제 검토가 필요한 사안입니다만 그것도 아마 시도하면 이게 장기적인 관점에서 과제로 제가 이제 말씀드리는 건데 이게 오히려 더 효과적이지 않을까. 지금 학생들이 과거에는 영어를 배우러 제주로 온다 꿈도 못 꿨지 않습니까? 해외로 영어를 배우러 가는데 지금 이제 저희 사무실 맨 위에도 이제 캐치프레이즈가 쓰여 있는데 해외 유학 제주로 간다. 그래서 영어교육도시의 국제학교가 이제 완성이 되면 사실은 중국이건 영어권은 아니어도 비영어권에서 영어로 하는 국제학교에 제주로 유학으로 오는 모든 물론 과목을 다 영어로 합니다만 그 제주 대학 GTU 프로젝트에 어플라이한 그리고 거기에 이제 들어온 학생들에 대해서는 아예 그 학생들을 해외로 보내서 연수 6개월 이렇게 하는 것보다는 그 프로그램을 아예 4년째 교대 사범대 학생들을 4년 내내 영어로만 수업해서 기르면 오히려 경쟁력을 갖출 수 있지 않을까 그런 아이디어로 제공을 해봅니다. 감사합니다. 마치겠습니다.
Thank you, Principal, for offering your ideas. And next, Vice Superintendent, would you like to speak?
예, 오늘 네 분 발제를 하셨는데 일단 뭐 저는 교육부에서 국제 쪽 그리고 대학 정책과장을 해서 대학의 국제화 교육의 국제화가 필요하다는 부분도 많이 최대한 그 예산이 허락하는 범위 내에서 많이 확대돼야 한다는 데 대해서는 동감하고 또 다양한 프로그램들이 많이 돼야 한다는 측면에서 이론이 없기 때문에 그 부분보다는 저는 또 시도교육청 부교육감으로 또 소중동 교육을 하고 있고 또 제주대에서 하는 GDU 사업에 대해서 굉장히 좋은 사업을 추진하고 있고 또 교사를 양성해서 제주도 교육청 관내에 배치를 해주고 있기 때문에 김익상 수총장님과 이인혜 교수님께서 하신 발표에 대해 중심으로 말씀드리겠습니다. 저는 이제 교육부 공무원으로 오랫동안 근무를 해왔는데 사실 중앙정부에서 많은 교육정책을 추진하는 과정에서 항상 매번 느끼는 사항이지만은 교육의 변화와 학교의 개혁이 교사 역할의 변화 없이는 힘들다는 것을 절실히 느꼈고 교사 역할이 정말 중요하다는 것을 잘 알고 있습니다. 그래서 중앙정부의 교육개혁은 학교 현장의 교사 자발적인 활동이 없이는 성공할 수 없다고 생각을 합니다. 특히 뭐 제주 국제자유도시 성공 그리고 제주도 교육의 국제화 역시 학교 현장 교사 역할이 성공 여부에 달려있다고 생각합니다. 이런 점에서 오늘 김상 부총장님과 이인혜 교수님 발표하신 양성기관, 교원 양성기관의 역할, 그 GTU 사업이 굉장히 중요하다고 생각합니다. 제가 와서 보니까 제주도교육청은 이런 계획을 추진하는 데 있어서 굉장히 다른 교육청보다 훨씬 유리한 환경을 갖추고 있다고 생각합니다. 그래서 타시도가 시도하지 못하는 스마트 교실 환경 구축이라든지 자유학기제의 모든 중학교 전면적인 실시라든지 그리고 학교 수가 다른 시도에 비해서 많지가 않기 때문에 선택과 집중 효과가 크다는 장점을 가지고 있다고 생각합니다. 그러나 오늘 발표와 관련해서 GTU 사업의 추진에 있어서 저는 제주도 교육청과 협력하기 위해서는 외형적인 교육시설 구축보다 더욱 중요한 것이 저는 교육 내용적인 측면이라고 생각을 하고 있고 이런 점에 있어서의 GTU 사업을 좀 성공적으로 추진하기 위해서는 그 제주 국제자유시설의 특성을 살리는 교육체제의 좀 획기적이고 전향적인 접근이 필요하다고 생각합니다. 구체적으로는 손봉수 소장님께서도 학교와 관련된 일반적인 의미에서의 변화를 필요한 여러 가지 많은 제안을 주셨습니다만 저는 정책적으로 우리 자율학교에 대한 대폭적인 확대 그리고 교육과정 운영의 자율성 확대 그리고 교사 채용의 개방성 확대 등 학교 경영 전반에 걸쳐서 국제적인 수준에 견줄 수 있는 전향적이고 좀 과감한 계획이 필요하다고 생각합니다. 특히 제주도에서는 타시도와 달리 제주도청과 교육청 그리고 제주개발센터, 국제학교, 지역사회 협력과 상생이 특히 더 중요하다고 생각합니다. 저는 사실 제주국제자유도시로 특별법에 의해서 그 법률적 기초를 이루고 있기 때문에 이러한 개혁은 제주도 내에서는 국제학교뿐만 아니라 일반 학교에 대해서도 좀 국가관리 중심의 교육행정의 기본 틀을 좀 보다 전향적이고 과감하게 계획을 해야 21세기를 이끌어나갈 수 있는 경쟁력인 우수 인재를 양성할 수 있다고 생각합니다. 그런 점에서 교원의 양성 과정을 책임지고 있는 제주대학교에서 21세기 국제화 시대에 좀 적합한 교육 성취 역량을 가르칠 수 있는 사전 양성 과정으로서 그러한 프로그램이 적절하게 운영돼야 한다고 생각합니다. 저는 글로벌 티처, 글로벌 에듀케이션에 포커스를 맞춰서 얘기를 하고 있습니다만은 교사 제주도 GTU 사업에 참여하는 교사가 왜 글로벌 교사야 하는지, 즉 글로벌 교사의 그 최소한의 그 requirements 충족 요건이 무엇인지가 저는 가장 중요하다고 생각합니다. 단지 두 개의 국가 언어에서 국가에서 모두 교사 자격 서티피켓을 갖추고 학생을 또 해당 국가의 언어로 가르칠 수 있게 된 것 그 이상으로 저는 글로벌 교사가 일반 교사와 다른 특별한 교육 내용과 교수 방법, 교수 학습 방법에 관한 독자적인 소홀성을 갖출 수 있느냐가 저는 중요하다고 생각합니다. 그래서 언어적으로 두 개 국가에서 모두 가르칠 수 있다는 최소한의 요건 충족보다는 가르치는 내용 그리고 교수 학습 방법의 혁신에 관한 충족이 저는 가장 중요한 사업의 아이덴티티가 돼야 한다고 생각합니다. 보다 좀 구체적으로 말씀드린다면 양국의 교육 과정이 인류의 평화, 인권, 환경 이런 부분에 관한 보편적인 국제사회 문제를 교수 학습 내용으로 정말 구성되어 있느냐가 중요하다고 생각합니다. 이인혜 교수가 발표에서 말씀하셨다시피 환경 문제나 경제 통합 문제나 자원 문제, 또 국가 간 협력, 빈부 격차 등 국제사회 구성원으로서 인류 보편의 이슈를 양 국가의 교육과정으로 적정하게 구성할 수 있느냐 하는 문제와 또 이러한 것을 적절하게 갖출 수 있는 교수 학습 방법의 역량을 갖출 수 있느냐 하는 게 이 사업의 저는 아이덴티티가 돼야 한다고 생각합니다. 이런 점에서 이 교수께서 발표하신 문제점 발표에서도 문제점으로 지적되었듯이 이 사업 추진과 관련해서 미국의 교육체제와 교육과정 철학 그리고 학교 경영의 자율성 등 이러한 측면에서 우리나라와 매우 다르다는 근본적인, 물론 호주도 마찬가지로 생각합니다. 영연방 국가로서 독특한 특성이 있다고 생각합니다. 그래서 그러한 근본적인 한계가 있음을 부인할 수 없다는 게 상당히 그러한 한계를 극복해야 한다고 생각합니다. 또한 우리나라 교육 체제가 글로벌 에듀케이션을 수용할 수 있는 체제로 개편되기 위해서는 저는 조금 더 국가적인 교육과정 운영 체제, 교과서 선택, 교원 임용의 개방성 확대, 학교 경영의 자율성 대폭 확대 등 초중등 교육에 대한 전향적인 조치가 있어야 성공할 수 있다고 생각합니다. 또한 그 손봉수 처장께서도 말씀하셨다시피 저는 이 사업이 이 소수의 그 프리 서비스 학생들이 복수학위 과정을 통해서 호주나 미국의 글로벌 티처 프로그램을 이수한다 하더라도 우리나라 공교육의 일반적인 전체 학교를 대상으로 하는 세계화 국제화의 과제를 달성하기 위해서는 이 사업을 좀 보편적으로 또 확산하고 일반 학교의 계획을 촉진하는 그러한 사업으로 연계 확산이 돼야 된다고 생각하고, 그래서 저는 이 사업에 굉장히 중요하기 때문에 좀 더 그 이후 일반 학교에 대한 전파 이런 부분을 위해서 2차적인 사업이 돼야 되고, 정책적으로 교육부에서 좀 더 많은 관심이 있어야 되고 예산도 좀 더 많이 확대돼야 가능하다고 생각합니다. 예, 이상으로 마치겠습니다.
Okay, as much we would like to have enough time for discussion, I'm afraid we are running short of time. So I think we would like to invite the presenters for their final comments, maybe for 1 or 2 minutes each.
Okay. Would you like first? I'll go from there.
Look, thank you for the opportunity to make a comment. You've seen me on the computer. I've been writing notes and looking up references of statistics as people have been speaking. There's two things I'd like to comment on that I've learnt from the presentation. First is I have been checking on PISA results from Korea and some international analysis, and I think it's fascinating that Australia, where I come from in the ACT, has very similar performance to Korea, but the differences are profound. Australia ranks lower than Korea, but the ACT is the same, or the ACT is higher in reading in 2009 and 2012 in PISA, but there's a massive difference in the amount of time children spend doing homework, cramming and doing exams. So on my presentation I didn't talk about research collaborations in any detail, but already there's a research project in terms of effective language teaching that's linked to this obvious concern about English language teaching that we could, or that people could explore with great interest. But the other one I want to comment on was Professor Lee, when you talked about the difficulty of accreditation authorities of recognising each other, and it just occurred to me for the first time the absurdity of that. Why couldn't there be a global accreditation or registration of teachers, where teachers, regardless of the country they came from, had to demonstrate that they were able to interpret curriculum, design learning experience, assess students, and then trust teachers to be able to learn from their context, to be able to work with different cultural groups and children with different learning needs. Then it would be truly a global profession. Because when we talk about diversity of placements, we're talking about, if the world's this diverse, we're talking about a fraction of it, where we might send students to a rich or poor school, or a boys' school or a girls' school, but it's still within Australia or within our jurisdiction. The differences are not that great at all. But imagine how good it would be if we moved toward a global competency to rival local jurisdictions. You've really got me thinking about it, and I've been writing notes since, so I've really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's been great to hear different perspectives, and I'm incredibly impressed at the vision for Jeju to become an international centre and the establishment of international schools. And I think it was on your paper where you said it's pursuing an aggressive international, or someone mentioned an aggressive internationalisation strategy, and I think we have to be aggressive and passionate about good ideas. So I think I've really learnt a lot today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ridden, for your inspirational comments. And next.
Similarly, thank you. Similarly, I too have learned enormously. We're involved in change and thinking differently about the role of education in our future together in ways that are exciting and innovative. And the Jeju project and this forum are hopefully will craft a vision that others can follow and that we can scale up in multiple locations. This is right-minded, in my opinion, very clearly. I just want to piggyback on something that Dr. Kim had mentioned about these are my words, maybe they weren't, this isn't quite how you intended them, but focus on experiences abroad and whether or not we can do a good job in global education without rich, enduring study abroad experiences. And you from my introduction about the location in which I work, you can imagine why I would be interested in that question, because many of our students shy away from opportunities to study abroad. What that's led us to do, we have several faculty members in my university engaged in using social media in ways to enrich international experiences for our students, using Facebook and things like Instagram and Twitter, in collaborations with other teachers and other teacher education students in different locations around the world. Sometimes one of the most interesting projects we currently have running is between a social studies class for high school teachers, students that are learning to become high school teachers, with a group of teachers in Gaza. And they were having real-time Facebook conversations during bombings in Gaza, and really a transformative experience for these students in little tiny Monmouth, Oregon. So I'm hoping that we can achieve some of the same goals on a more local level. So I just want to finish by pointing back to this issue of assessment. Until we get serious about the outcomes and develop ways to talk about and to judge whether or not we're moving systematically toward those outcomes, I think we run the risk of sort of spinning our wheels in this business a bit. So I appreciate everyone's efforts to get clear about what we mean about global education, what's most important to us, what's most valuable. So anyway, I've learned enormously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Girard, for your suggestion about maybe different way of approaching global education, not necessarily students leaving their home country, but using technology, we may be able to explore other alternatives. And Professor Lee.
짧은 시간에 대답을 하기 위해서 한국말로 하는 것을 이해를 해주시길 바라겠습니다. 손봉수 초장님하고 김원찬 부원님께서 말씀하신 것에 대해서 제 견해를 잠깐 표현하도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 손봉수 초장님이 얘기하신 기회 요인과 그리고 향후 과제에 대한 부분은 대단히 저희들이 받아들이고 또 반영해야 될 중요한 내용이라고 생각을 합니다. 특히 말씀 가운데 해외 유학을 제주도로 오도록 만들자 하는 것은 대단히 중요한 캐치프레이즈라고 생각하지만, 그러나 다른 측면을 우리가 하나 생각해 볼 필요가 있는 것은, 교육이라는 것은 굉장히 상황적이고 맥락적이고 또 교사와 학생의 상호작용의 관계 속에서 나타난다 하는 것입니다. 그랬을 때 국내에서 해외 경험을 하는 것이 얼마나 위험성이 있고 실효성이 있는가 하는 것들은 우리들이 고려를 해봐야 된다 하는 것입니다. 맨 마지막에 재학 요건을 얘기하시는데 재학 요건이 결국은 재정이거든요. 따라서 재정 문제만 해결되어진다면은 저 생각은 많은 교대 4대 학생들이 외국에서 최소한 1년 정도 해외 유학을 할 수 있는 이런 기회는 주어질 때 더 확실한 글로벌 교육에 대한 그 경쟁력을 갖출 수 있고 그것이 제주교육의 발전으로 들어올 수 있지 않겠는가 하는 그런 생각을 해보고요. 김원찬 부관님 굉장히 좋은 내용을 말씀해 주셨습니다. GTU가 초점을 둬야 할 것이 교육 내용에 대한 측면을 강조해 주셨는데 대단히 동의를 하는 부분입니다. 그러나 현실적인 여건을 한 가지 말씀드리고자 하는 것은 일단 이것이 GTU 사업만 가지고 해결할 수 있는 문제가 결코 아니다 하는 것입니다. 예를 들어서 제주대 발전을 놓고 4대가 변방이고 그리고 교대 4대가 주변으로 지금 되어져 있거든요. 이 교대 4대가 제주대 발전의 100% 중심이 될 수는 없어도 현재와 같이 변방이나 주변에 있다 한다면 저는 글로벌 사업만 가지고 지금 얘기하신 이 교육 내용의 측면을 발전시키기는 좀 어렵다 하는 생각이 듭니다. 그렇기 때문에 제가 제안하고자 하는 것은 제주대학 전체가 정말 제주도의 글로벌 역량을 위해서 새롭게 비전을 만드는 것이 중요할 수 있다는 것 하나 하고요. 두 번째는 제주대학의 역량만 가지고 이게 힘들다 하는 것입니다. 역시 지역의 교육의 발전을 놓고서는 저는 두 파트너가 더 필요하다고 생각하는데 그것이 교육청과 그리고 더 크게 볼 때는 도청입니다. 대부분의 예산이 도청에 있기 때문에 도청과 더불어서 제주대학이 글로벌 역량을 위한 교대 4대 학생 양성을 위한 이런 비전들을 함께 마련해 나갈 때 기회 요인이 지금 크게 있지만 이 위험 요인을 해결해 나갈 수 있지 않겠는가 하는 생각이 듭니다. 따라서 이 기회에 제가 말씀드리고 싶은 것은 정말 GTU 사업에 우리 교육청 그리고 도청 심지어는 손봉수 처장님 계시는 JDC가 함께 큰 비전을 만들어가는 게 중요하지 않겠는가 생각을 하고 또 제안을 해봅니다. 이상입니다.
Thank you, Professor Lee and Vice President Kim.
예, 저도 이제 느낀 점을 간단하게 말씀드리겠습니다. 지금 제가 알기로는 제주국제교육도시에 지금 학교가 4개 정도 이제 만들어지고 그 다음이 어떻게 되는지에 대해서는 아직 설명이 없습니다. 그리고 이제 제주도가 우리 돌아다니다 보면 제주특별자치도라고 돼 있는데 다른 도와 달리 뭐가 특별한지를 모르겠습니다. 마찬가지로 교육도 제주도 교육청에서 저희들도 미국의 차트스쿨이나 이런데 또는 다양하게 교육을 시키려고는 하고 있습니다만은 과연 제주도 교육청이 뭔가 특별한지가 없습니다. 예를 들면 자율학교의 교사 채용을 이렇게 글로벌 티처를 만들면 이제 수요가 있어야 공급을 할 거 아닙니까? 저희들이 공급자 입장이라면 제주도에서 또는 제주도 교육청에서 이러한 정책적인 또는 이런 문제가 해결이 돼야 되지 않을까 생각을 하고 그런 것들을 앞으로 이제 같이 좀 논의하면서 좀 뭐라 그럴까 좀 혁신적인 개혁적인 방향으로 요새 혁신이란 말은 좀 다른 이미지가 있어서 그런데요. 좀 개혁적인 방향으로 가야만이 저희들도 이런 교육을 발벗고 나서서 할 수 있다는 거죠. 그래서 우리 교육청이라든가 도청이라든가 JDC라든가 우리 여러 교수님들 이렇게 도움이 있고 이런 토론들을 계속하고 해야 이제 제주도의 자율학교라든가 어떤 교육 프로그램의 변화에 저희들도 같이 따라갈 수 있는 게 아닌가 하는 그런 생각에서 잠깐 말씀을 드렸고요. 마지막 하나 더 말씀드리면 여기 부교육감이 와 계시기 때문에 보통 우리가 교사를 양성해서 내보내면은 그걸로 끝입니다. 말하자면은 화살을 쏘아놓은 거하고 똑같아요. 이를테면 현직 교사와 예비 교사가 같이 활동을 한다거나 이런 게 굉장히 적다는 거죠. 그래서 그런 장을 앞으로 많이 마련해야 교육이 좀 더 발전적으로 갈 수 있지 않는가 하는 그런 생각을 해보고 대학교하고 교육청 또는 기타 여러 기관이 함께 협조할 수 있는 그런 분위기가 좀 마련됐으면 하는 바람입니다. 이상입니다.
Thank you, Vice President. Well, the atmosphere feels like it has been warming up so far, and maybe we are ready for main discussion. But I'm afraid our discussion is coming to an end. And I think everyone will agree that we've had a very fruitful session. Through this session, we have learned a lot more about each other. And I think we are going back home with more defined directions for further discussion. Our further coming together will foster Jeju's effort for global education, and in return, we hope it will enrich our partner institutions' global education. Thank you, presenters, discussants, and the audience for your commitment and interest for global education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you. Thank you very much. We need to shoot more arrows. Thank you.